space allocation, or will the state allow you to plan ahead for the 2022 space?
The question is, when you build space and plan for space now, are you doing it according to today's program of instruction, or are you allowed to forecast to the future? You're absolutely allowed to forecast, and that's the beauty of this planning process, is you get to say to the state, we're not this big, we're this big, and we have to plan for when we're this big. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
When you're calculating for improperly used space, lab space, I would like to ask that you not put non-CTE classes in our class, because the constant gripe I get is, you're making noise, we can't talk, we can't lecture, and it's like, hello, you're in my classroom, and we make noise.
Yeah.
And there really isn't a good union there between having all these other classes filling in our classroom, because maybe we're not in there all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've looked at that, but it's not working.
That's a little bit beyond our purview right now, as far as situating, but
Right.
that's a real good point for you in the future as you plan where your programs are going to be located.
So let me address that so that there's clarification. What you're saying right now is data that is going to drive the future facilities. Any planning for a particular building or modernization of a building, the stakeholders for that building and the departments will be at the planning table to be able to look at the sizes and logistics of how the configuration for that building is going to be. That will be part of the next phase for the builder. This is not the job for them to determine that for the college at this point. So go ahead.
Yes.
In the past, there have been problems where closet space, storage space has been listed as classroom space or laboratory space.
Correct.
Has this been corrected?
Yes, it has.
Okay.
Our company walked every room on every campus during your intercession and recoded them. Now, the space inventory was done quite well before, but like I said, there are a lot of gray areas, and there were some mistakes. But there were some where it was a gray area, a large amount of space, and we were able to improve the cap load ratio, the number that the state looks at, by several percentage points.
Okay, follow-up question on this. Where you have space that serves two purposes, a classroom and laboratory studio space. How was that classified?
We did it to the advantage of the college.
Okay. Third question, on individual space configurations for individual departments, where do we go to see what was determined? I know in the past for my particular department, we were given a determination for space by someone, and a consultant, who had no idea about our needs, and they classified us as an art department when we're commercial, and they did not include the proper amount of space because they didn't include studio space for us.
We were coding according to these categories only.
So you didn't
is it a
down
lab,
by
is it a
department.
classroom? The state doesn't really, they look at you as a whole, and they look at you as, you need classroom? Okay. You need lab? Okay. You guys internally decide, is it going to be the art department or is it going to be Department X?
Yeah. A quick question on the 1.5% growth rate.
Yes.
Did you take that as an assumption, or did you validate that figure at all?
We validated it by doing...
You validated it. How did you validate it?
We looked at demographic trends, population growth, employment trends, etc., and our experience in the community colleges of California. We've worked at many of them. Again, it isn't an exact science, but we feel very confident that, I hope I'll be back here in 15, 16 years, and I think we'll be pretty darn close. And Mike Moss comes into colleges now and looks back to the work he did 15, 20 years ago, and it's pretty remarkable how close. So it's going to put you well into the ballpark of the space you're going to need.
Can we, is it possible
Let
for
me
us
get through
to
the presentation.
go through the presentation before we ask
We're
more
not going to be
questions?
able to get through.
Yeah.
I have a
So,
question on a statement you made, though, in your presentation, and you talked about this gray area. Is that gray area reflected in any column here, or is
this column right here. Well, I'm not exactly sure what you mean, but
Well, you said there were gray areas that you reallocated to different types of space. Does that show in this chart, or is it a forthcoming chart?
if a space was, for example, as the other gentleman pointed out, if it's used for lab and it's used for classrooms, you know, in the case of Laney College, we want to reduce your inventory of laboratory space because we want you to qualify for laboratory space in the future.
I understand that, but you said that you had 2 columns with figures, this column and one that you said had been recalibrated because some of it was gray area. Where does that reflect? You know, in other words, if some space originally showed up as lab space and then when you really looked at it, it became classroom space, is that reflected anywhere in this, or are we going on the first assumption?
No, this is all adjusted.
Yeah.
This is final.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. So the numbers here are actually extremely important because what we did then was work with the architects and we hand off these space needs. And what they do is they provide a guideline for them, not a restriction, but a guideline for determining and looking at possibilities for how your facilities are going to look in the future. So we work very closely with them. So these numbers helped help the architects to move forward to the next step. And Cheryl's going to talk about that now. There you go.
Kind of bounce through. Just these are some of the recommendations that Moss has come up for the district. But then kind of moving into where we pick up, basically.
Sure, since you can be able to speak.
Oh, sorry.
I can hear you.
Sorry.
Okay.
Basically where we pick up is, in addition to then picking up on what Moss has done for the numbers and the program needs, we've also been kind of off on our own doing assessment of your whole campus, of every single building, of the open space, the issues that you might have, the needs that might be there already just to address your facilities, as well as the town hall meeting we had with you before. WLC distributed a survey that I think many of you may have filled out about the condition of your facilities. We've been to a couple earlier meetings with President's Cabinet, earlier town hall meeting that looked at the educational plans you had in process. So we've had a number of touches, so to speak, with your community to gather information to help inform our process. And it's all kind of led us to the point of what we want to show you today, is that based on all of this material that we've gathered, you know, what are we coming up with, what are we seeing, what are we suggesting back to you as that roadmap to 2022. So with that, I want to turn it over to Frederick so that he can kind of bring you up to speed and review what we think we heard from you in the first town hall meeting that really helped form our vision.
Okay. Hello, I'm Frederick Corman with Beverly Fire Architects, and it's really good to see a lot of you again here. I remember we all had this town hall meeting about 2 months ago where we split off into groups and had a whole list of things that you could identify what the heart of the campus was, what you wanted to see. It was really an open forum of whatever you really felt you wanted to see Laney become. So that's very helpful for us because a lot of you know Laney on a more intimate level than we do. So it's really great to get that feedback. This was a drawing of all the many things that came out of that meeting. And I'll kind of go over the main themes that you all identified. One of the main ones was the image presence of the community and advertising what happens here at Laney. Laney, from the outside, if you drive by, you don't really have a good idea what goes on in the main quad or what kind of activities or learning facilities are going on when you just drive by. You don't see that. So what a lot of people identified is that they would like to be able to know what goes on as you're walking by, driving by, and have the campus show that. And part of that was like the centers of excellence that the campus or the district has decided they wanted to promote. An example would be the cosmetology department. Right now that's over in Building B. It's a little tucked away, not a lot of street traffic there. We'll show you in our, what we've been considering is moving it to a spot where it's more on the street, mainly at 7th and 8th and Fallon, so that people walking by that may not be at Laney as a student could also go into the cosmetology department. So that was kind of some of the